Smile time. Okay, and I do get myself ready. I crack myself up. Eden with Just Be Spiritual Boom here. Janine, welcome to the show. Please say hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Quick blurb. This time right here, children, honeys, is about keeping our vibes up because in the latter part of 2003 and going into 2004, we are potentially going to experience some radical changes. So for me, being that meditation is kind of my jam, meditation, going out into nature, gratitude, doing your best to get fluoride out of your diet as well as aluminum, ticking up the pineal gland. I've got a list so I don't forget anything. That also means eating as good as you can, knowing there is just crap being loaded into foods, regardless if you're trying to do organic. I just heard about, Janine, have you heard about this one? Appeal. Beware of that sticker.
No.
Okay. A friend of mine just telegrammed me that it is basically from Bill Gates. It's like this protective shield that's put on vegetables and that sort of thing to keep them fresh longer. Yet you can't get it off. You can't.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I didn't know the term or the name of it.
Yes. And hopefully I'm saying it right. It's APEEL. And for me, I just want to further broadcast. I've been off now. It's been 5 months with no processed sugar or alcohol. I did have one drink. I do 1/2 decaf coffee. That's pretty much it for caffeine. And I'm hoping, soon I'll be free of that as well. So stay out of fear. Chaos means rebirth. Love, compassion, empathy, all of that. And today, my intention is to have a very high vibration conversation with this woman who just went off. She's back. All right, let me read it.
I touched something.
Don't touch anything, Janine. Okay, and always with last names. I when it comes time to read, Janine Steffens. Steffens, good gracious. She has devoted, okay, let me get into this, 15 years of inspiring others to realize inner growth through the transformational process of accessing the Akashic Records. And within that, I'll note Anastasia in episode 40 was one of the highest listened to podcasts as well. And she talked about the Akashic Records because that's what she does as well. So we're going to get Janine's take on it. Like many of us, including me, she started corporate. She was a software integration analyst for large corporations such as Microsoft, Netscape, SAP, GE. Yet, almost 30 years ago, she started to question, thank goodness, energy, spiritual, and esoteric subject matters. She also saw that she was an empath, so she was able to sense information about people. The journey began with learning and reading everything she could get her hands on about energies. Then came a life-changing class for dynamic learning of manifestation through the Akashic Records. She provides guidance throughout the U.S. through her readings of the records. She also knows about the Great Awakening truths, and she speaks them on BitChute and Rumble. And your YouTube channel was canceled, correct?
Yeah. I had almost 40,000 subscribers. I think it was about 40,000 subscribers, and they said they had enough of me. That's not nearly as much as some other people that had over 100,000.
I know. Well, tell us to begin with. First, again, welcome. Tell us when you started to notice that things weren't quite right, or I don't know if that's a term, or just going into the Great Awakening. What was your thing?
Well, Eden, thank you first of all for inviting me on. I was very surprised by it, and I am very honored, and I appreciate you wanting to spend some time with me this morning. And let's see. So your question is when, it's funny. It's a funny story. I've always have done things remotely in my corporate world life because it's called electronic data interchange is my programming. So you didn't have to be in one particular location. You could be anywhere, and that's what I always did. So when there was the COVID shutdown, it was nothing for me. It was pretty much the norm, but I had more time on my hands, and It was in 20, I actually have always known that there was, since I was a child, that things weren't right. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's one of those, you feel like a rebel, you don't fit in, that type of thing. But when 2017 came around, I was on Twitter and there was a particular handler, I think it was called White Horse, that I have no idea how I even got in tech. I was not a big Twitter person. I was not a big social media person, but all of a sudden this person was texting or sending me stuff back and forth on Twitter and says, "Do you know about the Red Cross?" And then it was other things. And then they sent me that video. What if everything that you knew that you were told was a lie? And I started listening to what what was about the Red Cross. All the monies don't go for them. It's basically all money laundering for any of those things in cancer stuff. So that was the beginning of it. And I turned to my husband and I said, "Look at the stuff that this person is sending me." They would send it. I guess I could. I can't recall how Twitter worked back then, but I guess I could get it like almost like an email from him. And he was sending me these videos and all this other stuff. And my husband was instantly said, "Block him." You know, he didn't like the information that was coming across to me. And looked at him. And I still to this day regret doing that, but it was made me think. That was the first time I started to do my own research. And then I found
And let me
people
ask,
like
this was just this random person just reached out to you.
yes.
Wait, okay.
I was not a Twitter person whatsoever. I just decided what is this Twitter all about? I mean, I know programs and I know how to write
Yeah.
programs, but the social media is completely different. And so that it was my first thing. I always felt very protected and guided, and things are always sent to me. And so I started to really research a lot of that stuff. Everything that he was sending to me,
Yeah.
it just opened up a world. It felt comfortable. It felt right. It felt like I knew that there was always something that wasn't right about this world, and so that kind of set me down the rabbit holes, looking into everything. I think I discovered Charlie Ward and Mel K. Mel K was a huge influence on me. And every time I turn around, she would start your own channel, start your own channel. But then when I discovered Gene Decode with Kirsten W. doing those shows. He kept talking about the dumbs, and I had no idea what he was saying. And I would listen and play it back and listen, and I'm like, "Is he saying DUMBS? What is this with the children and these dumbs?" And then I found out it was an acronym for something. And then I opened it up and said, "Oh my God!" And that's when I decided I follow my spirituality a lot. I follow my internal voice, whatever it is that you want to call it.
Mhm.
And I was kept thinking, I got to do a channel. I got to do a channel. What am I going to name it? And always loved Bob Seger. Turn the page. His music. Turn the page. And I was driving on the highway, which a lot of times when your energy is moving, you're moving, I'm downloading, and that's how it works with me. And I also believe in animal tokens, animal spirits, and mine is the red tail hawk. And so I have told the story so many times, it's probably going to bore some people, but I was
Well,
driving
it's new to me, so come on.
so I was driving and the song came on. And I said, "Oh my God, turn the page." And then I said, "Would this be it?" And then I looked up and there was a red tailed hawk flying right over my car. And I said, "Okay." I got home, I jumped off, I got on my deck. At that time we had a lake house, and I got on my deck and I just started talking. And I don't even remember what I was talking about. People were telling me, "Hang it up, get off of there, go away. You're boring." And because I did I was nervous. And so I worked it out. The more that they told me to how bad I was, the more I strive for improving.
So who was telling you you were bad?
Trolls, just trolls in general.
Oh, gracious. Okay.
Yeah, because that's what people look for. They look for, their own self-empowerment by tearing somebody else down, right?
Mhm.
And so it was awful, but it gave me the drive. And then I happened to be thinking, "Oh, I love all these people that I'm listening to." Bryce Watson was one of them, Mel K. And I reached out to Bryce and I had my phone number and she called me right away. And she said, "I'll be glad to help you out." And that's the type of person that she is. And I was so excited. And then from there, it just led to the next person was Gene Decode. Of all people, was Gene Decode. and so on and so forth. And now it's been 2 years, and I've gone back into my Rolodex, if you will, and I'm inviting back all the people back onto my show that have helped me in the beginning, and we're just catching up, and it's so exciting because I've gone out. I'm also reaching out to doctors and so on and so forth to bring a lot of more health information onto the show. We could talk about all day long what's wrong with the world, but how are we going to fix it, right?
Right.
So that's a little bit of my tangent about how I got started with Turn the Page. And it was for authors. It was specifically for authors, anyone who had written a book. But then it just evolved. More and more people wanted to come onto my channel. And it was, I have Brad Olson on there as an author. I had a lot of spiritual um, teachers that wrote books, and I was just reaching out to them. And then I started to do a little bit of books myself. But I love the interviewing. I am a cornucopia of different things. I love to interview. I really don't feel comfortable being interviewed, to be honest with you. And that's why I don't do it a lot, unless I'm very familiar with the group. And
Oh my gosh, that makes me feel special. Thank you. Thank you for coming on then. Yeah.
yeah, and only because I'm always interested in humans and human beings, human nature, that type of thing. So I love to dig deep with people and who they become and where they've come from, just as you're doing with me.
Now, so tell me when you were little, what felt in terms of being a rebel and not fitting in? Can you articulate more about what that was or
The way I thought, it was always so I grew up with, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. There's 7 of us in the family. I didn't think like them, but I felt more. I was more emotional. Where they would let just the water roll off their back. They tend to, um, when we got together, and still to this day, we would tease each other. Teasing was not a part of me. To me, it was hurtful. Even though people say, "Oh, I'm just doing it in fun and stuff like that," but
yeah.
to me, it was a very low vibration. But then there were other things that I noticed that I sensed about certain people. Either I was gonna, I liked their energy or I didn't like their energy, and I didn't know it was called energy at that time. But it was just a lot of things, and then I do recall a lot of things that would come to me in the middle of the night, energies that would come to me, information would come to me, and so I would download stuff and thought that everybody else did it. I thought it was dreams, and it really really wasn't. I never knew what to do with it. So when I got to high school, I would do things like read my horoscope, is what I call them. I couldn't wait to open up the paper to read my horoscope to see, okay, where am I here, and that kind of started it up again. It was like a memory for me. And then I just started, when I got into my corporate world, I still didn't fit in. I could do the
Oh man.
programming, I could do all the work.
Hmm.
I was more interested in the people. I wanted to know about them. I wanted, I could sense things. I knew things about them. Even though they showed one face, I knew that they felt another way. And it was very hard for me to control that. And it was almost like when I was in corporate that I couldn't find my place. I thought, okay, I'm programming, I'll do that for a while, but I should be in like human resources because I could deal with it. And then I found out that they don't even do anything for the people. I was always trying to find my footing in this world. And that's when I knew that there was something. Either I was extremely um, unintelligent, or I just couldn't find what it is. And then when the corporate stuff hit, oh, let me tell you, let's go back to 9/11.
Yeah.
That affected me on a level. And I actually had an astrologer do a reading for me that somehow my chart was really aligned with it. That's when I started to, how do I put this? I could tap into some of those firemen that passed over. I was really at a level of mediumship, because I was one of those that was programmed into that TV. Now that we know what we know, I was playing into the movie, but there was other things that were happening on a spiritual end of things.
So what when you okay, so let's work on the timeline for me. So you were working corporate. always had been empathetic, always felt like you didn't fit in, yet you were doing this job, and then seeing things with energies, working with astrology, again, like you talked about, devoting or getting your hands on anything you could get your hands on. When you were doing corporate, as you continue doing this, what was that like?
Well, I always did 2 things. So I went to work because I was told this, you go to work, you pay your bills, and then you pay yourself, right?
Yeah.
That whole model. But then in the meantime, I'm reading everything and anything. You know, Christine Northrup of the 90s, there were so many health. I was a sponge absorbing it all. I remember reading about 100 books in 2 months.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
had to balance it out. I had to balance out the corporate with the metaphysical, as I call it, or esoteric. So when I was in corporate, it was okay, I get in there and do my job, and then I was bored. I get it done, and I was just like, there was this thing that was gnawing at me. I couldn't figure it out, and I thought, oh, maybe I want to climb. Maybe I want to do like the corporate ladder thing, get into management. And I kept getting shot down. They didn't understand me. They couldn't peg me, if you will. They saw that I was extremely intelligent. I could solve problems for them, but it was almost as if I was ADD, which I wasn't. And I'm surprised they didn't tell me that I was. But I would like, if I was doing a program in IT, sitting in an office in a cube, I'd go,
Mhm.
I want to go to the manufacturer. I want to go see what these workers are doing. I want her to understand their day-to-day job, so that it's easy for an IT person to sit into a cube and do what they're doing. But if you're not interacting with the people, the users who actually have, and then I found out that the users have these workarounds with holes in the software that the IT people didn't understand. And then I started to make things much, much better. But I never got the credit. It was kind of like I was this blabbermouth. As soon as I discovered something, the guy next to me would take it and run with it. And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut for the life of me. And it was because I was excited. That's the type of person
Yeah.
I was, always excited. I wanted to share information, which is what I do now. But I always noticed that when I was in corporate, the everybody would kind of get ahead of me, or else I subconsciously I didn't want what I thought I wanted, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So I hopped around in the 90s, and everybody did. And then in 1990s, all the IT people hopped around. I went to GE. I started out with, and then I found my path was consulting. I didn't have to listen to anyone. I didn't have to sit in a cube. I could do it all on my own. So
Okay.
that's what I did. And I traveled around the United States. And it started out with Netscape and Microsoft back in the day when they were both fighting over rights and stuff like that. And then I went from there, and then GE said, "Hey, you've got this knowledge. We need you over here." And I collected that paycheck, and then I just kept moving around. And my family, I remember my sister saying to me one time, you're dropping all the best jobs out there that the people want." And I was just like, to me, it was all political bullshit, and I didn't care to sit there and, just collect a paycheck and be, how do I put this? Just, you're in a queue, for God's
Mhm.
sakes, and if they
Yep.
don't give you the work today, it's almost like you're in school. If your teacher gives you the homework assignment, you could do it. But if the manager didn't favor you, you'd sit there. And I remember going on a project in St. Louis, just sitting there because, first of all, they sold my resume, they sold me, but they weren't ready for the work, but they wanted to collect a paycheck months ahead. And I would sit in this chemical company in there, and I was picking up all the senses of these chemicals. I had no idea what they
Oh my
meant.
gosh.
And then finally, after 2 months, I got up and I walked. I said, I haven't seen any work that they'd given me. I quit. And the guy that hired me said, we were wondering how long it was going to take you, Janine. I was collecting a paycheck, and they were collecting, of course,
Oh.
double, because they had the resource on location. So there was a lot of political stuff in the corporate world. I just didn't understand it. Now that I do, I look back at it and I understand all of it. But in the meantime, I was always balancing it out with understanding my own spirituality, taking classes, Akashic Records, taking Reiki, understanding chakras. Carolyn Mace, I followed her around for so many years, learning her stuff. She was right out of Chicago where I was. I would go to her studios. I would be participation in her studios. all of them. They were so accessible to learning all the stuff. Until I when all the stuff happened with COVID, then I knew I was ready. It was my turn.
Isn't that amazing? So during all this, did you, with these connections that you had, did you feel like you had, I don't want to say a family, but knowing that the corporate was one side and all of this juicy stuff was the other, were you able to talk to people? Did you have relationships with those spiritual people?
Yeah. Definitely did. I always felt at home, but you know what? It was a different time than it is now. Some of the spiritual people you had to be just as cautious of because they were always out to make the dollar. And
Mhm.
if they saw that you could help them make the dollar, I owned a body scam back in the late 90s. It was a $30,000 machine. I went into business with this woman and I started it up as a business because I know business. So first of all, I'm
Right.
a Pisces with Virgo rising, and that basically says I can be spiritual and business at the same time. And I finally figured out I can meld those two together, but you got to be careful on who you pick. And so when this woman took some money from me, it was only like $2,400, but she took the money anyways. I was devastated by it. I just thought spiritual people were always going to do right.
Right.
That
I've
was
been
my
through that.
first lesson in my 30s. And then after that, I said, I don't trust anyone. This trust issue has always been a part of me since birth. And I've heard my husband say, when are you going to trust people? When are you going to trust people? Well, now that all that the stuff is out now, nobody trusts anybody. But there's a big difference. We're more awake to it than we were back then. Back then, we didn't know why we weren't trusting them. Sometimes we could get close to them to figure them out. As everyone says, my lawyer told me, because I wanted to sue my business partner, said, next time, hire an enemy, give you a reason to look over your shoulder and keep an eye on them.
Mm.
So that made me think, okay, this is the way that this world is. So I had to build up my own self-esteem and find myself in order to create a new business. And it was many years had gone by. Now I believe I've got a business. I'm doing this. I love to grow it. But I have to have a really good reason to grow, and if it's helping people by doing readings, that's my reason. And let me tell you, the
Mm.
Akashic Records have helped me so much in understanding human nature and what makes us stuck, what blocks us, what's ours, what doesn't belong to us, things that we've taken on. There's so much to all of this.
How are you doing now with trust?
Um, I listen to my intuition. I call it my radar. For whatever reason, if I sense something, I go the other direction much quicker than I used to. It's like I stuck around. I always gave him three chances. It was always three turns, right? Now it's just like, no, you're not aligned with me, no matter what it is, and I'll bless you, and we will all go our own ways. There's no reason to develop a relationship, and that's what we're here for, is understanding relationships on a level much deeper than most people think that we are.
Yes, indeed. I'm gonna write that down for a second. I found the same thing in terms of when I first started, when I really got into this in my 30s, I guess you would call. So I was advertising beforehand, and it was one of those things. Oh, someone's spiritual, so I can just, we'll just do this and we'll partner up. And oh my gosh, it can, yeah, really. My eyes have really been open, and especially now with the Great Awakening, how many spiritual people still have no idea about the bigger picture of things. So, to
Right.
walk that walk as well. Have you seen a lot of that also?
I see that some of the spiritual people are trying to bring the corporate bull in now. I'm sensing it. So it's become the norm, if you will, on for a lot of people. They understand mind, body, and spirit. We've always heard the terms all the way going back to
Yeah.
the 60s. But now I think it's much understood at a much deeper level. But I think that once people all just have that good feeling about somebody else, and they just it's all free and loving and all this other stuff, then I think the corporate stuff, the matrix mind, starts to creep back in. I'm seeing a little bit of that, not much, but I'm not judging it. It's just that if it's that I see it, it's not aligned with me, and it could be aligned for other people. So when you start to say, when you start to make it a business, and there's nothing wrong with making a business, and I have made it into a business, but it's more for me, in my guidelines, to so that I'm more constructed with it, and I've got to improve it all the time. But when you are got it coming from a totally different matrix mindset, and I don't want to give out what what I'm seeing, but when you start developing it as like you were in advertising, it's a marketing, it's sales,
Yep.
it's all about the money. I've This is the way that I thought, and I've got a dear friend who always says, Janine, I know that you're not always wanting to sell something, but you've got to make money. And I said, yeah, but you know what? What I'm doing, my work, it will come to me. And it's always been that way my whole life. Don't ask me why, but it's how I manifest in each person. And people will tell you how to manifest and what you've got to do. Everybody has their own vibrational frequency to manifesting things, and it's all coming from the heart intention. And if it's coming from somewhere else, if it's all coming from the ego, the mind, if you're not getting that heart and mind if you're not making room in the mind for the heart, you'll manifest it. How long you manifest it, I don't know, but it's up to that person that's going to basically drive that manifestation. And that for how long that they carry it out is up to them, and how it changes is up to them. We do have a lot of power, and a lot of people don't know how self-empowered that we are. um, I've always known, and it started out with material things. So when I was, I don't know, when I was younger, I always said, "Oh my God, there was a Buick Riviera. I want one of those." Well, then they changed the model, and I didn't want it. Then all of a sudden, they had the Cobra, or well, not the Cobra, the Cougar came out, and I got that. Was it as much as I thought it was? No, and then all of a sudden it's like, I want to own a house. And so I would work it, and that's where my attention and my focus went, and that's what I would get from all of it. Okay, I've got everything in life materialistic. What else do I want? Well, I want to work on myself. And I know my own things that I need to work on. So I'll work on those. And is trust one of them? Yes, trust is one of them. Will I always question it? Will I still behave in a way slightly, not as much as I may have in the past, but it's still there. Those are things that we carry on throughout our lifetime, and we just work the onion, if you will, the layers of the onion.
Continually improve. And it's really interesting with you talking about that coming from a marketing advertising background and not doing any marketing myself, which that was my career was I was 15 years in it. Yet it's so funny to be so away from that now that that was my life. That's what I went to school for, and just realizing it's I'm not to say it's a bunch of hooey, um, but you don't need it. And you're right, going from the heart is a whole different level
Mm,
of doing
yeah.
things.
Well, we do still. I want to say we still need it. Right now, I've never got monetized from YouTube. Never. Most people are out there, and you're sharing, what is it, 40% with YouTube, and stuff like that. I basically, so what I did in the beginning, when I got on into social media, is I was interviewing everybody else, and I kept quiet about what I learned throughout my, 35 years. I didn't say it, and then all of a sudden one day I heard some people talking about the Akashic Records, and I'm like, "No, that's not right," and then I would hear other things, and I'm like, "That's not was my teaching." And so I thought, "Okay, Janine, put yourself out there. Let them know you know about the chakras, you know about Reiki, you know about the Akashic Records." Till this day, the Akashic Records is just so, I don't know how to explain it. I'm so protected of it that
Oh,
sometimes, when I'm in the teachings, I can go really deep with people and help them a lot, so that they can help themselves in the Akashic Records level one. But I have a really hard time selling myself, and it just might be a pattern with me, to talk about myself, right? Because even when I was a kid, if I was really excited about something, I would hear, "Don't brag about yourself." That's that type of programming that I probably still have to work on. And then there's other people that have no problem with just sitting there saying, just selling whatever product that they have and, doing whatever it is. And they've got the charisma and so on and so forth. What I hear from people about who I am is always they see me, they see my heart, and they say I'm real.
Yep. Yep.
Well, that's what you're getting. And if
I
there's a
feel that.
product that I'm taking and it did nothing for me, I will let you know it didn't do anything for me. But this is me. Everybody has something that affects them differently on an individual level. So, that's the problem with doctors, right?
Yes. Hey, do you mind, what do the Akashic records mean to you? And I love that you said you're protective of it because they're important and they're significant. Okay, you talk.
Yeah. So the Akashic records. When I was, I think it was on level two, and level two is reading others. And when I had to go and read somebody else, it was almost as like I was initiated. Level one was good. It was a lot of journaling. You had to learn how to journal and all that other stuff and ask the questions. You learn about intention. That's very important.
Mhm.
When the level two came in, there was somewhat of I call it a golden light. And it was almost as if, and it was so bright that it seemed like I was in this golden light for hours, where the teacher just said, "Okay, read the person next to you." And I was just in awe. And the person that I was reading was very, very spiritual. And he knew, he was sensing what I was going. He was laughing. It was almost like I had Buddha in front of me laughing. But so from that, I knew, I knew the truth about it once you get to that certain level. And so what I'm so protective of it is that it's our records, everything that we do, that we have an intention, we are creating, it's recorded. And so it's very sacred to me. It's sacred from a perspective that this is a human being, anything breathing, it could be plants, your dogs, anything like that. You can obtain the information from it. So information is so powerful, and that's what I mean. It's so sacred. So when I get information on somebody, and it's not always bad information. It could be, I can see their light inside of them. And most of the time when I first meet somebody, I see their light. And I'll tell you this, when I was doing a lot of social media stuff, and then when we finally met in person, I would just cry. I'm hugging the person. I met him for the first time and I would just cry. And they're like, "It's okay, Janine." And they didn't understand it, but I'm seeing something that's right in front of me. And I've always known, it was just true love. It's pure love. It's white light. And then of course, I had to learn the hardest part is not to judge the shadow side of things. And that was my thing that I had to learn. So I would ask them to work with me constantly, show me, help me, teach me, show me, help me, teach me over and over again until, I've gotten to the point where now I am teaching it by not judging it. And it's all beautiful stuff. It really is. That's why I feel it's so sacred, because it's us. And we're extension, right? We're working with our higher self, right? And who are we? And I will tell everybody, we are God.
Yes. How, like for me, learning when I first started, when I got not so great information to share with someone, really discerning how to deliver that, when to deliver that. Where are you within that?
Well, a lot of times we have our ego, right? And it's
Mhm.
our ego easing God out. So what we have to do is ask our ego to step aside or behind and never go away. It's there to protect us because we developed it. That's the first thing I do when I start doing a reading with someone is I tell them when they develop their ego and why, and then they remember. And for whatever reason, they have worked with me like that. So, um, I'm sorry, what was the question? I just lost it.
It was when you get concerning or hard information,
Okay.
how do you discern when to deliver that? How are you with that now?
Yeah, I'm really good because I can constantly ask them to show me in a way that I understand, that I can read it, that I can download it, and it's not my ego stepping in, because you never, and this is where I cross the line with, like, put the line in the sand, if you will. Is a lot of times people will tell you negative stuff, and the Akashic records aren't about the negative stuff. It is coming from a pure aspect, a pure love of, the way that they deliver the information.
Mm.
And I'll have people that will come into my class that just are channeling, like they are channeling someone that they've worked with, and that's not it. I don't know who is the Akashic Records. I don't know a name. I don't know a label, and that's the way that it is always been. And people say, "Well, I work with Archangel Michael and the Akashic Records," and I'm not judging that if that's what you do. It's just not what I was taught. And so Mary Parker was the one that established this Akashic Records from the area that I was from. And then from there was this a gentleman by the name of Ed Kami who was out of Texas, and he came into our area to teach us all about the Akashic, and he stayed with me while he was traveling around in Illinois teaching the Akashic Records, and he taught me so much. And I
Oh,
asked him about this golden light because the golden light will come and go from time to time. And so he basically said that there are times I'm always going to be able to see this golden light, but not just yet. So I get it in glimpses of when I know that I'm in very loving company. It'll come out in the corner of my eyes, and
mm,
they have a message for me, and then I'll tune into it. And I've learned to I don't I don't I just don't go in and read anybody's Akashic records. I always have to have permission. And if a lot of times I'll ask people, may I please have your permission? And they'll say yes. And then I'll go in and read some information for them. But a lot of times I may not even need to open up the Akashic records. So if you understand the various levels of dimension with the Akashic records, so when you're at the psychic level, it's a lower one. You're the mediumship, it's a little bit higher, and then you just keep bringing it all the way up. It's about the 12th dimension when you're in the Akashic records, and
mm.
it's really easy to bring it up. A lot of people will have their ego come in and out of those different dimensions. That I can't do it. I'm not getting nothing. I'm stuck. Well, then I'll go in and I'll work with that pattern and tell them that it's no longer serving them in order for them to get a little bit higher. I do a lot of work in my classes. Sometimes they're mostly 2 to 3 days, but it's deep, deep work. And then it's because it's all about them in level one, and then level two is completely different where they're reading other people.
How many levels are there?
There are right now I know there's 3 levels, and I think people are working on the 4th level. Level 3 I've seen. I don't totally agree with it, but I have to work with them to develop my own level 3. My level 1 is my own development from what I was taught, but I still use the basic foundation tools.
Nice.
Because in level 1, they have you journaling. I'm helping you get past your things. I mean, I go really, really deep where people have said to me, I've gotten comments, I had PTSD, that's the order of PTS, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, PTSD, and they basically said, I've gone in my records, I worked with it, I now have relationships, and they're working through whatever. And the PTSD is huge.
Mhm. So they're using it to heal themselves.
Yes, and that's what level 1 is. It's all self-healing. I tell them, "This is your time to be selfish."
Well, and part of that too is I'm assuming, like for me, too, you have to clear off your own stuff to open yourself up to others and to get rid of your own blocks and pains.
You have to acknowledge it and understand what that stuff is. I don't know if we
Yeah.
ever go, and I'll have a lot of people say, "I've already worked through that," and they'll be really
Oh,
stubborn.
yeah.
"I've already done that. I already done that," but
Mhm.
there's another layer, and there's just a slight layer. And if that layer there is the layer that you need to truly, at the level of information that you truly need to understand, to release, to be able to, okay, so we're studying ourselves. Okay, to access this information and create a much more positive, loving records for the future, right?
Mhm.
And the Akashic Records is not necessarily about right now, but all through the COVID, they had me working with people now. So if people ask me about their past or the future, I'd go back and I get whatever was residual to now from their records, and that's how they worked with me. It was almost like they were showing me the level of consciousness at the time throughout COVID. And that's what I got from it because it was the same stuff. I'm like, how come you not let me go back into other lives with them? And like, no, let's bring this in. And when we bring this in, it'll help them for what's happening now so that we can get to their future that they're asking for.
Okay, when you say they, what do you mean?
It's the, Akashic Record Lords, they call it. Some of them call it the Akashic Record Keepers. I don't know who they are. I just know it's a loving white light.
And does it come to you as a group or singular sometimes, or it can change?
It changes. It's usually one because, um I believe it's one, and it's funny because, I can download very quickly. I've got that quick well, I used to have a very, very quick mind, but, when I get the information so it all depends. I have to be able to get the information for myself and also translate it for the person in front of me.
Mhm.
So they will show me sometimes they may like you asked me if it's just 1 or 2, and sometimes it may be 2 because they're showing me different ways. I have to be able to relate. And a lot of people, I mean, I've had people that say, "What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean?" And then I'll say, "Okay, slow it down." I tell them to slow it down for me, show it to me in a picture, how I can explain it to them because they come in forms of pictures
Mm.
to me. I used to be able to. They used to be able to show me stuff like a video, a very short video, almost like TikTok things.
Yes.
And that changed a while back, but it was like, why am I seeing this gentleman dancing with, what was it, what do you call those, oh, I can't even think of the word. So this guy was, he lost his legs, right? Or not lost them, but lost the use of his legs, and he
Okay.
loved to dance. So, they were showing me what's those things you put underneath your arms?
Crutches. Crutches?
Crutches. Oh my god. So they're showing me this gentleman with crutches, and I'm like, "Okay," I get that picture, and all of a sudden he's kinda moving around a little bit more, and then he throws the crutches away, and it's stuff like this that would not relate to me whatsoever, and so I've got this person in front of me, and I said, "I have to tell you what I'm actually seeing," and then she would just break down in tears and say, "Oh my goodness, it was an uncle that I took care of that lost the use of his legs." So I says, "Well, he's trying to tell me that he's free now, and he's happy, and he's dancing wherever he is at." And so, of course, that's sometimes the information doesn't make sense to me either.
Right. I know. And then there are times when I relay information too, which I'm like sitting here going, I don't know what this means, but I'm going to give it to you. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it can have a shocking effect. I'm sure this is with you as well. And sometimes something simple can really go deep with
Yeah,
someone too, which it just seems like, "Oh, I'm just giving you this little piece of information," and boom. And I
yeah,
tell people that too, like, I'm not a lot of times, saying these things to disrupt you or I don't know what some of this is gonna be, and,
right.
I get exercises for people too. I'm like, "Okay, the exercise looks like it's gonna do this for you, but I don't know," and they'll come back with a completely different story. Are you noticing, Janine, with people
Well,
that are
do they take you to various levels? Because they'll take me when you ask if there's multiple, and
Yeah.
I usually will get one, but they'll take me to various levels. Like they'll take me down to the psychic level. That other one was they were taking me at the mediumship level. For some reason, they had to bring me to this man who's no longer on this plane, and
Yeah.
to show me how he is doing. So there's different levels that I know that I go up and down.
Yes, and I would agree with that. Like, lately, so I do hands-on body work as well. So I, would always intuitively know where to go. So I'm a psychological empath. So it's like when I hear someone's story verbally, I know where to go physically. Yet lately, I felt an actual hand on my hand
Mhm.
and going into deeper dimensions with things. And it's just been, has this been the same for you as well? Like things for me are just opening like every week, there's something new. It's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, that was happening quite a bit. And so let me kind of set the stage for you where I used to live. We were on a lake and we had nothing but trees around us. There was one other house. So I think I was so in tune to the nature and everything.
Mm.
So that was a totally different vibration from the Chicagoland area. I was in the suburbs of Chicago.
Jeez.
And so that opened up so that was 6 years ago. It was right before, it was 2017. It was right before all the stuff was going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that opened up a lot of my spirituality, on
Oh,
levels that I didn't even understand. Now that we've moved and we're in another location, I'm real close to the ocean. That is changing for me also. So I went
mm,
from very earthly to the aqua. energies. So I needed to be grounded, I believe, when I was in Arkansas. And now I'm kind of just trying to bring it all together and see where my readings go from here. I've got quite a few readings that are scheduled that are coming up, and I'm not gonna judge it, but I'm gonna see how much it has changed. I did go through a big time where there was just so much information coming in and so many different things that and processing information in my sleep and then waking up and then just being, so what I'm trying to say is I'm getting closer to being so connected to a lot of different things.
Nice. And to let everybody know, you're in your new place. It's been 2 weeks, only 2 weeks.
Right.
Wow. So that'll be really interesting to see. Again, going from a lake oriented place to ocean. Oh,
Yeah, so
sounds
I
really
had the
great.
water in front of me,
Yeah.
and then I had all the trees around me, lots of deer, lots of nature deer, and the deer would just walk by. They'd see my dogs. We had this fence, and they'd see the dogs, and they're like, "Hello, how you doing?" They keep moving. All the nature stuff was right in front of me, and now it's going to be completely different. So, I love it. I love where I'm at because I'm back in a neighborhood, if you will.
Mhm.
I feel more connected to people where I was not disconnected. I was just, I don't know, finding myself is the only way. And all of a sudden I felt very lonely. I felt like I needed to uproot, and that's exactly what we did.
So had you planned on that for a while, or suddenly you were just like, hey, we need to move, and it happened fairly quickly?
It went so quickly that most people were amazed. Even my husband that belonged to a club up the road at the golf course there, they just
Mm.
said, "My gosh, it seems like you just mentioned that you were going to move and now you're doing it." And it happened right around Christmas. I called a realtor and we looked, and then I talked to my one friend. She says, "I've got a realtor friend," and next thing you know, so at the end of March, we were gone. So it was 3 months. That was quick to pack up
Whoa.
a huge house in a boat and all of our toys and everything, and just relocate. The tough thing was we didn't think we were going to find a house.
Right.
And so where we're at and where we looked, very little inventory, especially in Florida, my goodness. And then I wasn't happy with what I was seeing because, in Florida, they're just selling Mother Nature. They don't, there was a lot of homes that needed too much work. And I'm like, we're too old to keep doing this.
And did you know that that state was where you wanted to go, or did you feel it energetically? And was your husband all on board? Is he on
Yeah,
board with
so
everything?
we looked in so many different places, and then when he said the location that we're at now, it felt home. And he was more than happy with it more than where I was looking before. We looked here 10 years ago, and we
Oh,
weren't
wow.
ready to retire at that time.
Okay. And how is he with everything that's going on? Knowing that when you first talked about Twitter, he was like, "Hey, you need to block that person." Is he on board with everything? I'm assuming he is if y'all are.
On certain things he is. He doesn't believe a lot. I haven't asked him a lot of questions because it's best not to. But
Oh my gosh, our earphones got pulled
so
off. Okay.
I think that a lot of times he'll just say, "Oh, that person is full of this or full of that," or something like that. He's not totally, I don't know. I don't think he's on board with what we know about the government as much as what I talk about.
It sounds like you guys have a harmony, maybe not on the same level, but there is still this it just works.
It works.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. And so it's so funny because whenever I'll say, well, like when we're gonna go to Arkansas, I said Arkansas was not in the plan of all of our states. I wanted Tennessee because my mother was living there. I wanted so many other different places, and all of a sudden it said Arkansas, and I thought, well, that's a step. That was a step for us to move, and it was because when we were, getting ready to sell our house, we didn't realize what it was worth. I mean, we're just like, okay, and then we said, oh my God, this is going to put us into retirement. He
Oh, so it
said,
was
all
worth
right,
more
let's
than
do
you
it.
it was worth more than you expected. And hey, let me comment real quick. Your video, there's some lines that are coming through and it's getting heavier and heavier. So not oh, not that it matters yet, just to point it out because also
Yeah,
energy is
it
involved.
might be my energy.
Okay, so I
On my
can
phone.
totally, it doesn't matter to me. So
Mm.
So your house, so are you going to retire?
Um, no, I am not. I'm going to continue doing what I do. I don't call this retirement. It is a lot of work. I tell you, the back end of all this stuff is so much work. I'm always looking for an assistant, or I'm looking for someone, but I have to get to that point that I have to make enough money for myself and for that other person, right, to help me
Right.
out. And I'm hoping that my husband can do that now.
Oh, wouldn't that be neat? So is he knowing that you guys met, I'm assuming when you were in like your career was computer-ish, computer programming. Oh, there she is again. Get your face back.
It's my cable. I'm
Oh,
sorry. That's what it was. So something is loose here.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like it was all fixed. So with your husband starting out, and I'm assuming your career started when you guys got married, you were in computer and then you took this vast change. Was he like, "Hey, what are you doing? I don't quite understand this," or like, "Okay, I'm
Well,
with you."
at that time, he was thinking about retiring then. And then we were planning it out. And I said, well, if, I keep working in the corporate world, I was doing things remotely. I said, I can do this from home. Well, the thing is that I would do my social media at night. And then Gene Decode said to me, can you do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? And I said, yeah, sure. Well, we got in a meeting and a call, and somebody said, things are going to be slowing down. It's around Christmas time. Don't be jumping on YouTube. I'm like, oh shit, they know. It was a matter of time that they finally said, we're going to let you go. And so when they did, it was right after we were having our conversation about him retiring.
And what did he do? Or what
Um,
does he do?
he's in the same field of computers.
My gosh, okay, wow.
Yeah, and so he was getting tired of sitting in a chair 8 hours a day and so on and so forth, but, um, at that time, I walked out on the deck and he's sitting out there, and I just said, "They just let me go," and his head just dropped. But it's been 2 years, so it was only 2 years that we extended it, to the point where, you know so what happened was, when I decided to finally let everyone know that I can do readings and help them more than anything. I went on Tarot by Janine show, and I was booked for the end of the year. It
Oh
started
my
in,
gosh.
I think I was in April. My phone, it was a one time I was working so hard and I said, I got to go shopping for something for myself. I'm just going to, I have not done that. So it's been a year that I was on doing this. I said, I got to get out of the house. And so I went, I had my hair done, and I had all this stuff, and my phone is going ding, 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 ding. I'm
All
like,
right, let me
what?
get this right. You decided to do this. You were on someone's video podcast show, and that got you busy for a year.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And so when he said to me, oh my God, what are we going to do? You lost your job and I want to retire. Then when I did the readings, and I was booked, I was triple booked,
Jeez.
on the same
Oh my
times, and I was,
gosh.
like, trying to untangle it all, and I was sweating it out. I was down in the basement. I don't think I came up from the basement for months. And
Oh
then
no.
he said, "Can you do this making a living?" And I said, "I think I can."
Indeed.
And so he said, "Well, if we plan this to go down to the ocean where we always wanted to go, he just said, let's try to do this, but there's peaks and valleys with all of this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I understand that, but I try to balance it out with the interviews and, doing the spiritual stuff and all of that. And we'll see where it goes.
Nice. I can tell and feel within you there's such this compassion, okay, and such a a warm. Of course, I'm doing this, which means open heart, but it's such a warm heart that you have. And we talked about. So I end all of the podcast with the Just Be practice, and I've had, people do prayer, pep talk, meditations, and you and I talked about what did we talk about? Just like more personal development, or what do you want to do today?
In ending it,
Yes.
you know, I think it's going to be more along the lines of letting go of the fear. It really has to. So a lot of people. Do you want me to do it now?
Oh, yeah, I think that's
Just be
beautiful. Yeah.
practice.
Have
Yeah.
at it.
So we absorb a lot of different things that are happening, especially in the social media realms. A lot of people are waking up and They're searching, they're reaching out, they want to get away from the mainstream media. But in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of misinformation, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. And then there's going to be the truth that's actually out there. So we're at a time right now, a lot of people don't understand what's up, who's telling the truth. There are a lot of people put into the place of the social media influencers and the truthers, if you will, that are not giving you the correct information. So the only thing I could say to each and every one of you is that if somebody says something and it's not aligned with you, then stick with that belief system. Don't try to talk yourself into it because they're popular. We've been through that. We saw the Hollywood bullshit. We have to now take what we feel is our internal truth and eliminate the fear behind any of this. So some people, even the mainstream media is now reporting the lies that are coming out within the government. There's so much of this now, but then there's going to be there's six major network, I believe 6 or 9 major network news stations. They're still going to continue to lie to us. And then we're also going to have a lot of people that are just making up stuff that they believe is their truth out on social media. So whether you're on Rumble or YouTube or BitChute or any of these, Telegram especially, Telegram is the gamut of all bullshit. So my thing has always been observe but don't absorb. And so when you're observing it, it's like you're testing your own intuition of whether or not this is your truth for you to be aligned with. And also staying in the moment. If you're in the moment and you hear some information, just tell yourself, I'm going to wait and see this out. I don't know. Sit on the fence if you have to sit on the fence. And I'm hearing a lot of people, if I ask them a question about something, they're like, I'm sitting on the fence. And I thought, that's beautiful. That's exactly where you need to be until we get more information. This is an information war. This is a spiritual war. It's a combination of both. And war is, no matter how you look at it, is not good. So there's going to be the fear factors behind it. You're going to hear a lot of hopium. I'm still trying to work through a lot of that too, and try not to bounce it off of your friends of whether or not somebody is saying something that you hear over and over and over again. Well, that's the truth. What is your own gut feeling telling you? What is your intuition telling you? What is your heart telling you? What is your mind telling you? And that's your answer. And if you still are very confused, learn how to journal, because journaling is writing everything out based upon what it is that you need to then go back and read it. And then if you say, oh my God, this is not correct, then that's your answer. But you're checking in with yourself. It's all about self-empowerment and understanding who you are. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that don't know who they are.
Yes, there are. And to even say, I'm still discovering after I've been doing this work for a long time, just like you talked about, there's layers upon layers, and you think you have something figured out. And then it opens the door to 50 million other questions. And just
We're being
how,
tested as human beings.
yes,
We are tested. And I used to always hear this when I was younger. I'm like, what do you mean you're being tested? Well, if you honestly take in some information, the universe will test you based upon your spirituality and your truths and your beliefs, and send you something that's whatever it is, it might be. And sometimes it's people. And it's almost as like you have to, it's not like you have to, it's almost as like it's a radar of whether or not this is aligned with you or not. And I even say that, with just this information I'm hearing across the board with all the truthers and influencers. What I basically do is if I'm hearing something and somebody asks someone a question and they don't give a direct answer and they're very evasive, they're not in their own. If they're not answering the question to the best of their ability, or they're just kind of going off in another direction, it's because they don't know.
hmm,
That will
well,
lead you down rabbit holes in their conversation. Be very careful of that, because if you're not getting the answer that or were at least expecting to get an answer, and they're taking you to other areas because they've got a wealth of information that is at surface level and it's not deep. I go very deep with everything that I do.
I love that. Me too. All right. Anything else you want to add? That was great.
No, I think that's about everything.
And I will officially end it. I've put out the intention lately that whoever comes on this show is the real deal. And Janine, I feel that with you. So thank you so
Oh, thank you
much.
so much.
for sharing your truth, for sharing your heart with everybody. And can you stay on with me for just a second?
Sure.
All right. Peace, peace. Bye, y'all. See you later. So cool of you to be here. I went from being off most social media to being on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, True Social, and you might be watching this on YouTube, Rumble, or BitChute. Or you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'm on over 19 directories at this point. So connect, comment, subscribe, like. Oh, and my intention is to have a new episode out Wednesday of each week. Oh, Lordy, more to come.